Welcome those of you who have tuned in to Unity of Monroe's YouTube channel on this day, which is emblazoned up there. It's the last day of the month of May. Ooh, that rhymed. I like it. So welcome you and welcome those who have gathered here today in this space and place. Thank you for being here. Do you remember back in the days when you were a teenager? What you looked like, how you dressed, how you kind of chose your group of friends or they chose you, the images you projected. What did you look like? You know, most of us did what? We tried to fit in with the group of people. So pretty much looked kind of the same, you know what I'm talking about? If you go way back to when, maybe it was in the 50s, maybe you had, what shall I say, poodle skirts and you know, saddle shoes and beehive hairdo. That's kind of what my brothers like to do. They grew up in the 50s. No, they like the leather jackets. Remember the leather jackets and the blue suede shoes? Well, it's a one for the money, a two for the show, a three to get a red and I go, can't go, but don't you step on my blue suede shoes. I'm wearing blue something, but not suede. But we looked, you know, kind of in sync with the group that we were with. We wanted to look like that. Back in my days, which was the late 60s, we kind of had the grungy hippie look, you know? I fit in real well with this group of kids. I kind of looked like that. And my mom would look at my clothes, my ripped jeans and my lousy looking t-shirt, whatever it was, because that's, you know, the uniform, fitting in. She'd look at that, she'd say, can't you wear something a little bit nicer? I said, Mom, it's my style, it's my individuality. It wasn't individuality, we were just trying to fit in a little bit. So whatever your style was, whatever it looked like, the idea was, you know, these combinations of clothes we thought, or hairdo, or, you know, the way we held ourselves, we thought, well, this is probably gonna allow me to fit in. But really, when you think about it, we thought maybe that was working for us. But when you think about those clothes, those styles and all of that, and hopefully we've all grown from that, of course we have, is that our true style? Is that who we truly are as our true self? It's just this kind of stuff that we wear, the style of the hair, whatever it may happen to be. But there's always more to discover, is there not? When we think about those styles of clothes that we wore and how we grew up, we might have called it our individuality. This is the way I choose to look, to conform. But it's really about just, you know, being a part of the group that we hung around with. Fortunately, the extremes of that, whether it was something like that, or I remember even later on in the mid-70s getting into those lovely Nehru jackets and leisure suits. Woo-hoo. That was a bad idea. I wish I still had some pictures of myself. The Nehru jackets were all right, but those leisure suits, ooh, I don't get those. But anyway, so we've grown from that. But we've played many roles in our life, whether we were a teenager or a young adult, whether we are right now, where we are right now. Because we all play those roles. We all desire to find what is my true self as this person. How do I identify myself? I am a person, I am a true self, I'm a true being as a loving child of God, as a sister, a brother, a husband, a wife, a friend, a worker, a retired person, whatever it may be, a grandparent. All of those things go into how we've defined the roles. As Shakespeare said, all the world is a stage, and all of us, all the men and women, are merely what? Players. We're players on the stage. And they have their exits and their entrances. We know about those. Those have come in and gone out. And one person, one man in his time plays many parts. We all play many parts. What's your part? Well, my part is to be this person at home. My part was to raise a family. My part was to have a good education or a job. When I think about my part as a minister and all the years that I've invested in that, I think sometimes, and have thought over the years, like, well, what's my role as a minister? How does a minister act and do things? And yet, the more I think about that, that's not my true self. My true self is to just be in the express business. You know what being in the express business, friends, is all about? To express the fullness of God and to love as much as I possibly can with each soul, with each person, with each situation I go through and grow through. You think about it. So you think about, as we've grown up, we've taken on what? More responsibility, right? You who are watching this had to take on more responsibility as you grew a little bit older, a little bit wiser. And that responsibility shows in our manner of way we do things, our activities, the fullness of life. But that's not who we are truly. That's not our true self. It's not our true self. Many of you know or have thought about people who've gone through the experience of having a career, say, for instance. And their career kind of defined them. Maybe we've heard a story or we know somebody who had a career and the man decided he was going to retire, but he kept questioning and saying, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. Now that I'm retired, what am I going to do with myself? We've heard those stories or we've read those stories or maybe known someone personally. 6 months later, that person is dead. That person dies. They didn't know what to do with their life. Or let's take something that's really personal to me. My mother, I don't know if I probably have told this story before. My mother, when I first got married, the first time I got married, I was 30 years old. I was the youngest and the baby of the family. And so my mother at 61 says to the ministers who are marrying us, well, this is the youngest child who's now married, getting married. Now, my role in life is over. My life is over. Basically saying that and confessing it to the ministers. And in 3 weeks after that, my mom was dead. At least she waited for the 2 weeks of the honeymoon. But, that was just like she knew, she felt, she decreed it. She affirmed that her life was over because she had raised 3 boys. And they'd all married and moved out. I'd moved out long before that. But, this thing about being married, I guess, was the kind of final thing, I guess. And you think about that. The roles and the identities, that wasn't her true self. Her true self wasn't a mother or a grandmother or a worker or a sister, all of those things. How many of you remember the story that comes from the book of Mark about Jesus' encounter with the rich young boy, the rich young man? It's a great story for metaphysical and symbolic insight and awareness. This wonderful story from the book of Mark. And we gain from it where it says, and Jesus looking at him loved him. Now, I want to point out that part of it where it says, and he loved him. Because this is somebody he knows that maybe is not connected fully with that Spirit of God within them. But it didn't matter for Jesus, right? Jesus always loved, or as the stories go and the information that we have on him. And it said to him, you lack one thing. You lack one thing. Go and sell what you have. Go and sell all that stuff and give it to the poor, and you'll have your treasure in heaven. Come follow me. And what did the young man say? He was disheartened by the saying. Why was he disheartened? Well, because he couldn't give that up. Because he was sorrowful, and he had great possessions. Now, we would look at that and say, yes, he had those great possessions, sure. We might even say that Jesus recognized this in him, and that's why he pointed that out, but he still loved him. He still said he loved him. And the point is that, yes, he had those great possessions, right? But guess what? They were possessing him. He was possessed because he held on to those things. Sometimes we get possessed, do we not, by the roles that we're supposed to play. Well, I'm supposed to be a minister. I'm supposed to be this way. Very stoic and serious and divine and all, whatever that means. And we can be that way. I'm supposed to be this way because I'm a friend or I think the only way we're supposed to be is our true self. What is my true self? A divine being of God. A beautiful expression a masterpiece, shall we say, a work of creation and art. So Jesus has that invitation to this young man, say, follow me. And in Aramaic, that Aramaic tradition, it's an idiom which simply means to follow in the way, in that experience of what Jesus taught. Or another way of saying it in reference to today's lesson, to follow your inner light. When he says follow me, he's not saying follow this particular religion or path, but follow your inner light, friends. To let your light shine. To let your light so shine. To be your true self. What is my true self? What is your true self this day? To find that original idea in God. As Paul said in the book of Romans, that we are children of God, and if children and heirs, heirs of God and joint heirs with Christ. You are an heir. So let's not err on the side of caution. Did I say that? Let's err on the side of being an heir. To be an heir to all that God is. The wonder, the awe, the insight, the wisdom, all of those things. We are children of the Most High. I believe that's where we find our true self, our oneness in God and creation, when we find that. Because we also have that kind of voice sometimes we fall into or listen to, that false self. That false self who we've kind of grown up with and we've kind of messed with it a little bit. That we're not, sometimes present to the world or present to loving somebody or loving ourselves. Many of you are familiar with the works of Thomas Merton, Catholic monk and mystic and author. And Merton talked about that as I've talked about earlier, as I talked about early on, like a set of clothes we wear. Like a set of clothes, that false sense of self is like the clothing you adorned yourself with when you were a teenager. Oh, it looked interesting. I'm sure it did, right, Carol? Maybe it did. But we shed that, metaphorically, of course. We moved on. And Merton talks about this idea. He says, we let go of those things. We shed those false illusions. Those illusions of our false self, as he said. And we let those things go. It's kind of like, letting go those roles that we took on. Well, this is how you're supposed to be if you are a friend, a brother, a sister. This is how you're supposed to be. You're supposed to be your true self. Find what that true self means to you, your identity, all of those things. To recognize as well that it's not something that's self-centered or it's not something that's pompous or arrogant. It's also not something that's, excessively fearful or, ingratiating on the other hand. But it's simply stating a metaphysical spiritual fact in a calm, confident, and loving and vibrant, respectful way. As all of us are called to claim this original divine blessing that we are in God and through the power and presence of God. So going through this wonderful human experience, we take all of this on. This wonderful, shall we say, true identity of who we are as a child of Spirit, as a child of God. Letting go of the false sense of self, because there are times, yes, it will intrude. It will intrude, and we must just simply brush that aside, letting it go. Not being fixated on the fact that, oh my goodness, I was just giving into my false sense of self. There are times when we've all been there. Don't fixate on that. Years ago, I read a wonderful autobiography. Maybe you've had a chance to read this, called Long Walk to Freedom. And it's a beautiful autobiography by Nelson Mandela, categorizing and cataloging and talking about his basically 27 years of unjust imprisonment. Then his release and what he brought to the world. But he says in the book something very interesting that I think we've all probably felt. He said, I felt regret that I was unable to be with his mother, with her, when she passed away. Why? Because he had a longing that had he chosen his life differently, it would have been different, so he could have been there with her when she passed. But of course, he didn't sit with that and didn't let it stew in his mind and his heart, because he knew that there was something grander and greater. He knew that there was something that he had to fulfill. And what he fulfilled for his people, for his nation, for his world, for the world that he lived in, for all of us, that long walk to freedom. Because here it could have been real easy to just stay in that regret. But guess what, friends? God does not will any regret or guilt for us. Never. Ever. Any guilt or regret. It's all human-made. We're the creators of that. Holding on to that sense of our false self instead of our true self. Our true self. One of the wonderful little stories I used to like to tell my kids was The Ugly Duckling when they were young. Or I could tell it to them now if I'd like, But it's a great story. It's a symbolic story, Hans Christian Andersen. This ugly duckling that kind of gets lost with the ducks, but he's actually what? She's actually what? A swan. But it isn't until she becomes transformed, that moment of inspiration, that moment of understanding, that moment of claiming, that she claims who and what she truly is, a beautiful swan, just like each and every one of us are just that. But we succumb sometimes to that false self, the ugly duckling self, if you know what I mean. To be true with our true self. Yeah, life is all about those magnificent things we go through and grow through, detours, right and left, things that we regret from time to time, things we feel guilty about. But God does not will that for us. God wills only God's grace, God's love, God's wisdom to pass it along. So here are some things to kind of think about, maybe process a little bit, to understand, am I giving in to my true self or am I giving in to my false self? No judgment here, no regret. Just realize if I'm holding on to a little bit of that false self, that I can always make that new transformative choice this day, this moment. Am I holding on to my real self, my true self, or my false self? Am I being more aware, loving, and open to myself and others? We know what that looks like. We know what that feels like. Or am I relating to others in a competitive or judgmental or needy way? Think about that for a moment. No judgments on that, just recognizing, yeah, there have been times where my false self says, oh, look at that kid wearing those ripped jeans and that ratty-looking t-shirt, like many people said to me back in the days. Or maybe they said to you. Instead, we make that new choice to be aware, to be loving, to be present, to be whole and holy in that moment. Do I believe that I am, or do I really, truly believe I am an heir of God? And if I do so, what inheritance do I claim this day? You are an heir of God. So err on the side of goodness, grace, and dignity. Or, again, do I feel I have to work hard to get God's grace, to deserve God's grace and love? God's grace simply is defined as always present. It's love incorporated. It's love unconditional. It's always there, my friends, always. So like that wonderful little story of the ugly duckling, we have to kind of rise up, if you know what I mean. We have to find that sense of self, that innate longing where we know and own the beautiful soul that we are. Not as an ego thing or an ego trip, but it's a claim for all of creation, as it said today in the Daily Word about being at peace. To claim it for one's soul begins to establish it upon earth. To claim it for yourself is this magnificent and authentic masterpiece that you are. We say hallelujah to that. We are all designed by God. Let us never forget that. Designed to what? to be our true self. What is my true self this day? Let us revel in it as that authentic masterpiece of God. And so let's take a moment, dear friends, to rise into and rise up into that thought of being, accepting that sense of our true self as you just take a moment to quiet yourself, to get relaxed in the seat where you're seated, to place your hands by your side or there in your lap, and closing your eyes as we begin this journey together. Closing your eyes and beginning to focus attention upon the power of your breath, the breath of spirit, the breath of life itself as you breathe in and as you let it go and just simply breathe out, breathing out into life itself, breathing out into the experience of life. For you are, I am, we are these beautiful creative masterpieces of life and love and joy and all that is, all that can be. Beginning with the very thoughts that we hold, the parts of our body from our head to our shoulders. We invite that sense of peace, of relaxation from head down through our body and our arms, our hands. I am relaxed, and I breathe in this moment. And let it go and breathe out. I am relaxed from head down through my feet, my legs, my lower extremities. All is in a state of quiet and peacefulness and serenity, breathing in once again. And letting it go and letting it go out and grow out into the world. I am centered in this moment. Centered and ready to take on, to enliven, to quicken that full acceptance of the beauty and the wonder and the masterpiece that I've been created as. This is my divine inheritance. This is truly my true self. As I claim that divine wonder, as I claim and own those faculties of mind and heart and expression, all that I am and am becoming is part of this wondrous gift of grace. Am I ready right now to claim that good? Am I ready to let go of my afraid times, my false self? Right in this moment, loving presence, I embrace my true self. And however that is coming to me and through me, it is the very voice of Spirit. It is the voice of life and wonder. It is all that and even more. I am part and parcel of the wonder and the beauty that is God on this planet. in this universe. Not only for myself, but for even those souls that I may find troubling and worrisome. For each and every one of us is part of this divine expression. We're all part of this divine inheritance. I choose in this moment to live from and in and as my true self. However that manifests itself, however that shows up as thoughts, feelings, and ideas, however I can demonstrate that. And with a quiet confidence and awareness, we claim that. We say yes in this moment. That is my divine inheritance. And so I invite myself in this moment to live in the quiet and the awareness and the silence of listening and respecting and honoring my true self. What is in this moment my true self? As we ask the wisdom from within, the wisdom of God. What is and how may I honor my true self in the silence? There is only the grace and love of God that is present as I inherit, take on, become my true self this day. And as I walk along and into each and every trial and tribulation, I walk with confidence, with a knowing that my true self goes before me and makes all roads smooth and peaceful. Thank you, loving Spirit, for that inspiration of being and claiming my inheritance as a masterpiece for this day and for all. So be it. Amen.